Hello and welcome to this episode of Bullseye, my daily take on issues of significance where I deep dive and bring clarity from clutter to information and news that needs better perspective, better analysis, and better presentation. 24 hours ago, the Union Minister of State for Railways, Veeranna Somanna, was in Goa and in the presence of former Chief Minister and current PWD Minister of the BJP government, Digambar Kamat, said that the double tracking section of the ghat section of the Southwestern Railways would take place only after a detailed project report or a DPR is prepared by the railways. In the same interaction, when questioned about coal pollution caused by the movement of coal wagons on the Goa section of the Southwestern Railways, the Union Minister of State said he had no knowledge about coal pollution in Goa. Now, this statement cannot be allowed to pass without being challenged. State for Railways is not aware about coal pollution and connected to coal transportation, then that itself is a serious problem. This is not a minor technical issue. This is not an obscure complaint from a small group of residents. Coal pollution has been central to the opposition to the double tracking of the railways. And this has been central for years. The foundation of the double tracking project has always been linked to the movement of more coal, iron ore, and steel. More coal transportation would naturally mean more coal pollution, especially when coal laden wagons on the existing track have already led to complaints of coal dust affecting homes and settlements along the route. But there is something even more concerning. Present at that particular meeting was Mr. Digambar Kamat, former Chief Minister Digambar Kamat, former Chief Minister of a Congress government in Goa. Kamat's presence cannot be treated as a mere protocol detail. When he was in the Congress, Digambar Kamat was associated with anti-coal pollution protests, including the massive candlelit people's agitation in Chandor on November 2020. That agitation was one of the major public expressions of anger against coal pollution and the fear of Goa being turned into a coal corridor. Digambar Kamat was present in that meeting. So how can Digambar Kamat stay silent when a minister of state now says he's not aware of coal pollution? The least that was required was some statement from Mr. Kamat stating that coal pollution exists and perhaps in the defense of his new party now that it's being treated. But there should not have been silence when coal pollution was spoken of. Because, Digambar Kamat could have at least looked back on that fateful night when he stood with the people of Goa, when he stood against coal pollution, when he said that this has to be fought. He could have reminded him that Manohar Parrikar, former BJP Chief Minister, had written to the Union Environment Minister opposing increased coal handling because particulate matter was exceeding prescribed limits. Yes, that is completely true. Was Digambar Kamat not part of the anti-coal pollution protest? If coal pollution was a real issue when he was in the Congress, has coal pollution stopped that he's in the BJP? Has the nature of the railway project changed? Has coal dust stopped affecting people? Has the concern about the Margao port and coal transportation disappeared? Or has the political position changed while the facts remain the same? Now, this contradiction has to be placed before the people. Leaders cannot take one position when they are in opposition and remain silent when the same issue arises in the presence of union ministers. Now, the issue of coal pollution was not raised only by environmentalists and protesters. It was also flagged by Goa's own former Chief Minister, Manohar Parrikar, the same party that not only Digambar Kamat belongs to, but the Minister of State for Railways. He belongs to a government led by Mr. Modi, who's the Prime Minister of the BJP party. And that is why the ministers claim that he has no knowledge of coal pollution is not just surprising, it shows a lack of proper briefing given to him on a public issue in Goa. In 2017, when Manohar Parrikar returned to Goa as Chief Minister, the central government's port authority had already submitted a proposal to increase the capacity of coal handling at Mormugao Port Trust, berth number 5A and 6A. Parrikar then took up the matter with the Union Environment Minister Harshvardhan and opposed permission for increasing coal handling at the Mormugao port. This is a matter of fact. This is a matter of record. In that particular letter, Parrikar specifically referred to the air quality monitoring reports of the Goa State Pollution Control Board. He said that these reports indicated that particulate matter was exceeding the prescribed limits at the existing handling capacity. He also pointed out that the Goa State Pollution Control Board had already directed Southwest Port, under which Mormugao Port comes, to reduce its present then handling capacity by 25%. At that time, the volume of coal transported was 5.5 million tons per annum. This is a crucial point. Coal pollution was not only being discussed in public protests, it had entered official correspondence at the highest levels of the Goa government. Parrikar, a BJP chief minister, wrote to the Union Environment Minister opposing increased coal handling because pollution levels were already a matter of concern. Therefore, when a Union Minister of State for Railways says he has no knowledge of coal pollution in Goa, he is ignoring a matter that had already been formally flagged by a Chief Minister of Goa who was a part of the same dispensation under which the Minister of State for Railways works. Parrikar's letter, of course, did not appear to have had the desired impact on the Union Environment Ministry because the ministry, in its 26th Expert Appraisal Committee meeting on December 14th, 2017, decided to increase coal handling capacity to 15 million tons per annum. Parrikar then wrote a second letter to Harshvardhan on January 17, 2018, expressing displeasure that his earlier letter had been ignored. He also noted that the EAC had not given consideration to the public hearing on the project held in Goa. This sequence, readers and viewers, matters because it shows concern that coal pollution was not an afterthought, it was already known. It was officially placed before the centre. The public hearing had already taken place. The Goa State Pollution Control Board's findings on particulate matter had been cited. The Chief Minister had objected, yet the push to increase coal handling continued. Now, I really wish, and I very humbly state this, the Union Minister of State for Railways, if he has not been properly briefed, should need to be briefed on this. At a very humble level, this video can be sent to him. At least he will understand the background to the coal pollution issue and what has been officially stated between the Goa government and the centre. He needs to know this because this increase in the coal capacity handling is very, very important because this was done in spite of an objection of a Goa Chief Minister. The larger background to this lies in the Sagarmala plan. The annual Sagarmala report issued by the Sagarmala Development Company Limited and presented as a blueprint for India's coastal development was prepared through the AECOM in 2016. That report detailed the future transport of coal, iron ore and steel from the Mormugao port up to 2035. According to that report, Mormugao port, where coal imports would land, would have to handle 48 to 49 million tons per annum of coal by 2035. This coal was meant for thermal power projects and steel plants in southern Maharashtra and northern Karnataka. Most importantly, the report made the transport link clear. It said that moving such large volumes of coal would require double tracking of the railway line. It also said that double tracking should be completed by 2019. This directly connects the coal expansion plan with the railway double tracking project. Therefore, when people in Goa say that double tracking is linked to coal transportation, this is not a slogan. It comes from the project's own planning background. The same direction was visible later as well. On August 31st, 2025, the Railway Ministry's official X handle put out a post on the benefits of the ongoing Hospet, Hubali, Londa, Tinai Ghat, Vasco da Gama double tracking project. The 363-kilometer project was described as one that would speed up coal, iron ore, and steel transportation in the region. It also said that the tourism to Goa and Hampi would blossom. This again shows that coal, iron ore, and steel transportation are not incidental to the projects, they are a part of the project, officially stated as part of the project and part of the benefits of the project. That is why the minister's statement that he does not know anything about coal pollution must be challenged at the beginning itself. Ministers cannot come to these kind of functions and just give wishy-washy replies, unchecked replies, raw replies, literally brushing away these questions, singing praises to the government and to the prime minister, and going away without even acknowledging real facts or without perhaps even knowing what the real facts are. A minister dealing with railways in Goa cannot claim to be unaware of coal pollution when the entire controversy around double tracking has got to do with coal pollution. You are the minister of a department which is carrying out the double tracking. How can you not know about coal pollution? Now, what is also important that Mr. Manohar Parrikar had flagged these air quality concerns, even when the Sagarmala report connected coal movement to double tracking. When the railway ministry itself has publicly presented coal, iron ore, and steel transportation as a benefit of a larger doubling project. Now, let us come to the second important part of the minister's statement, which he made yesterday in South Goa, that the DPR for the ghat section of the Southwestern Railways, he said that DPR, the detailed project report, will take place. What he said was that the double tracking would take place only after the DPR is prepared. Now, on the face of it, for people who do not know, this may sound like a very cautious, very procedural statement. But people must know, especially young people who are following this project, why has the DPR there not been done? And there is a history behind this, and that history must be looked at and checked. Now, if you see, this particular ghat section deals with the Castlerock to Kulem ghat section as part of the overall double tracking project. Now, this ghat section of the Southwestern Railway double tracking section cannot be treated as an ordinary railway stretch. The Castlerock to Kulem section passes through the Western Ghats and through ecologically sensitive territory. The issue is not whether another track can be laid. The issue is whether the project can be justified after accounting for biodiversity, ecology, wildlife habitat, protected areas, slope stability, and so on and so forth. And there is lots more. The reason this question is so important is that the Supreme Court had already intervened in the Castlerock Kulem double tracking matter. In May 2022, the Supreme Court had revoked the National Board of Wildlife approval for Castlerock to Kulem double tracking. The court said that RVNL, which is the Rail Vikas Nigam Limited, executing the project on behalf of Southwestern Railways, could come back only after a detailed analysis of the impact on biodiversity and ecology was done, and a fresh project or a fresh proposal had to be submitted. This assessment had to cover all the protected areas under the wildlife sanctuary. This means that a DPR for the ghat section cannot only be a railway engineering document. It cannot only be about cost, about alignment, and so on and so forth. It must follow from a proper ecological and cumulative impact analysis. If the Supreme Court has said that the project can come back only after a detailed analysis of biodiversity and ecology, then the preparation of any meaningful DPR must be tied to that requirement. The problem is that from the very beginning, the railways and the RVNL treated the Castlerock Kulem Ghat double tracking section only as a railway capacity project. They did not look at it as an ecological engineering risk project. The railways argued that the Castlerock Kulem Ghat section was only an operational bottleneck and that trains take 70 to 80 minutes to pass that ghat, and doubling was needed for passenger trains, for trade and tourism, and all of that. But this is only an operational justification. It does not answer ecological, hydrological, geological, and wildlife questions. So, hence, a comprehensive DPR for this section cannot merely say that the railway needs more capacity. It should deal with the nature of the terrain, impact on forests, impact on wildlife corridors, and all of that. The Supreme Court found there was no substantial basis placed by the railways and the RVNL for the requirement of double tracking when weighed against the habitat damage and environmental impact. The Supreme Court obviously was far more sensitive than the railways was. It also questioned traffic projections and they said that they required support from an independent and credible source before any construction could be justified in the Western Ghats. Let us not forget these observations of the Supreme Court. Let us not brush them under the carpet. The highest court of the land has said this. This is the heart of the matter. A project in such a sensitive landscape cannot be pushed forward only on the claim that the existing section is a bottleneck. The need itself must be established credibly and independently. Therefore, the minister's remark that a DPR will be conducted does not at all put any emphasis or any empathy into the issues of looking at it from an ecological point of view and not just a logistical point of view. The Ghat section is also physically and environmentally different from normal railway stretches. This is the Braganza Ghat. It has steep gradients, it has sharp curves, it has landslide prone conditions, heavy monsoon rainfall, and areas with very difficult access. Southwestern Railway itself has described the 27-kilometer Castlerock Kulem Ghat as part of the Western Ghats receiving heavy rainfall and requiring special monitoring of vulnerable locations. A proper DPR for such a section would have to be far more detailed than a routine railway doubling estimate. Now I come to the earlier biodiversity and railway assessment, which was made by the railways, which was found to be inadequate. The railways did do some biodiversity and environmental assessment, and I'm saying this was still found to be inadequate. The RVNL had relied on the Indian Institute of Science Biodiversity and Environment Assessment, but the Supreme Court recorded that the National Tiger Conservation Authority found the IISC study lacking in critical assessment, especially regarding project impacts. The NTCA, which is the National Tiger Conservation Authority, wanted an independent and detailed cumulative impact assessment for the entire Tinai Ghat to Kulem stretch. This is important because it shows that these studies, earlier studies, did not satisfy expert concerns. And that is very important. Then, of course, we should also look at the Goa side of the Tiger Corridor assessment. The court noted that this landscape is an important tiger corridor connecting Goa, Karnataka, and Maharashtra. The NTCA report was only for the Karnataka part, and no such report had been prepared for the Goa part, even though that the Goa portion passes through the Bhagwan Mahavir Wildlife Sanctuary. This again shows why a full DPR cannot be prepared without first addressing the ecological and wildlife concerns across the entire landscape. Now, the mitigation measures proposed earlier were also unclear. RVNL had spoken of underpasses, overbridges, wildlife mitigation measures, but the Central Empowered Committee found during a site visit that it was not possible to construct some of the underpasses at identified locations. The Supreme Court also made it clear that the assessment must consider secondary construction impacts. So it includes not just laying the track, but tree felling, muck disposal, waste mitigation, train movement, sound vibration. All these impacts had to be measured. And that is why a comprehensive DPR should contain all of this if the DPR is to be meaningful for the Ghat section. So the minister's casual remark that the DPR is being done defies all the seriousness and the depth in which the Supreme Court, the NTPCA, and other responsible bodies have looked into it. The DPR was not done because the earlier project was only pushed as a railway doubling project. This is why the Supreme Court stopped it and told the RVNL to go back and do a detailed analysis. Now, after the Supreme Court's order, a new Wildlife Institute of India's cumulative impact or environmental assessment was commissioned. Now, this Wildlife Institute of India took up this study, of course, after the Supreme Court order, which I was talking about, and it did a cumulative environmental impact assessment on wildlife habitat and ecological values for the proposed double tracking from Tinaigarh to Kulem. This Wildlife Institute of India Dehradun assessment was later submitted by Goa and RVNL along with a rights traffic study to support the attempt to revive or lift the abeyance on the forest clearance which the Supreme Court order had given. The Supreme Court order had stopped it. Okay. Now this is the current stage. At this point of time, the WIA assessment has been submitted along with the rights traffic study and in an attempt to lift the abeyance. Now, this study has been done and it has been used along with the traffic study to move this project forward again. However, the Regional Empowered Committee reporting to the Supreme Court has not accepted even this as sufficient. In March and April 2026, the REC has rejected the Goa government's latest attempt to restore the forest clearance restrictions. The REC reportedly found serious shortcomings in the WIA report and said it focused largely on mitigation measures rather than a rigorous environmental impact evaluation. This is exactly what I've been saying in this long blog, and I thank you for bearing up. Because even after the Supreme Court rejection, the Goa government tried through a study by the WII to somehow answer the Supreme Court's concerns. The Supreme Court is still not satisfied with the WII study. This is something that is needed to be understood very well. Now, a study that focuses mainly on mitigation is not the same for a comprehensive assessment. And this is exactly what the court has been saying, that do a thorough study. Don't look at only mitigation measures. The REC also, and this is something which was done very cleverly by RVNL and the Goa government, mainly RVNL. The REC refused to treat the Kulem and to Kale section as separate from the Castlerock Kulem section. And I'll explain this to you. It said that the Supreme Court's order must be read in spirit and that the study must cover protected area impacts. Now, what they tried to do was break the entire stretch into some small parts and get ecological clearances for those smaller parts, thinking it would be easier to get it from a smaller part rather than a larger impact area. They were just trying to be clever. The Forest Department itself, and what is ironical is that the Goa Forest Department itself has noted that there is very little ecological difference between Castlerock Kulem and the Kulem sections. Hence, this project cannot be split into pieces in a way that avoids the full ecological question. So even after the Supreme Court struck down the clearances, the Goa government, of course, the RVNL and the Goa government, and mainly the RVNL, have been trying to get the clearance back through these roundabout tactics. Now, this is why we need to worry about. Now, The minister's statement that a DPR is being prepared, therefore, must be examined very carefully, because I do not think that the DPR is being prepared in the manner that the court has been said, and that is very clear. Also, it is also important to know what, and there is very little public information about this, on why the DPR has not been placed before the people, what its scope is, whether it includes the full Castlerock, Kulem, and the Kulem ecological continuum. How can the Minister of State just say that the DPR has been prepared? Do the people know about it? Does it address all the concerns of the Supreme Court? Goa cannot be expected, or Goans cannot be expected to accept these vague assurances that the project will be executed as planned. Because the basic objection of Goans is that it cannot be executed as it has been planned, because the planning itself is faulty. So the minister's casual remark that it will be executed as planned because this government always executes what it plans itself is the challenge, because people want this not to proceed as it is planned because of all the reasons that we have elaborated so far. The people need to know whether the railways are preparing a technical DPR and then trying to fit ecological concerns around it, or whether this DPR will actually follow a rigorous ecological and hydrological and a wildlife risk assessment. The Supreme Court did not stop the project because the paperwork was incomplete. It stopped because the justification and impact assessment was not adequate. I hope the Minister of State realizes it. And I hope Mr. Digambar Kamat, a former Chief Minister of Goa and a current minister standing next to him, also realizes it. Because Digambar Kamat's silence is important. Coal pollution does not become less real because a leader changes a party. The concerns of Chandor do not disappear because somebody who once stood with the protesters now sits beside a union minister. The link between double tracking and coal transportation does not vanish because it is now being presented in the language of railway development. The Union Minister of State for Railways cannot say he has no knowledge of coal pollution because this has been officially flagged by Goa's former Chief Minister Manohar Parrikar, linked to coal handling at the Margao port, connected to the Sagarmala projects, and reflected in the public opposition to double tracking. Digambar Kamat therefore cannot remain silent. It is now very important that you give to Goa a hydrologically studied, ecological, geological, wildlife risk DPR, a DPR that covers all of this: geology, ecology, wildlife, all need to be covered. Until and unless that is done, the people of Goa will not accept this. These kind of statements don't mean anything. These are throwaway statements. It must answer the core questions that were raised by the Supreme Court, the REC, the Regional Impact Committee, the forest authorities, and the people living with the consequences of coal transportation and its ecological risk. Goa really does deserve answers as to why leaders who once opposed coal pollution are now silent when a union minister claims he has no knowledge of it. Thank you so much. Keep watching Ink Goa and do subscribe, like, and follow. It will only help us grow, and that will help us to bring you news that is uncluttered, without any bias, independent, and without any kind of government pressure or government bias. Thank you so much.